Hello again, football fans. This is Anthony coming at you with Two Fat Guys Fantasy Football, taking a look at the next team in our series of off-season breakdowns. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Green Bay Packers. As always, let's jump right into it, take a look at this roster and how it looked at the end of the season. So, first thing to note is, of course, this team has perennial MVP quarterback Aaron Rodgers, future Hall of Famer, um, who was able by himself to cover up a lot of holes that this roster has had in the past. So when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, they can make everything around him a little bit better. That being said, this roster is still pretty good. They do have a solid offensive line with Bakhtiari when he's healthy and Elton Jenkins when he's healthy on the left side. The rest of the guys along the offensive line are all solid as well. Um, Robert Tunyon is a good intermediary threat at tight end. Um, he's kind of a short route guy. He's a good security blanket. Does have some speed for the position. Speed's never truly been his game though. He's more of just a kind of a pure route runner. Um, but he's been a nice option for this team for the last couple years. At the receiver position, Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, two veteran guys. Randall's been around for a long, long time. One of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets through the years. So last year, when he signed his new deal to come back, he wanted them to bring Randall Cobb back as well. So here we go. Last year, they did draft two rookies in Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs. These guys are kind of going to be the future of the position for this team. Christian Watson was a little raw at the point of the draft, but over the course of the year, as he came back from injury, he started to really look good and was a kind of a fantasy superstar for a few weeks there down the stretch. So he's a guy that this team will be able to build around for the future. It'll be nice to see him kind of take the next step. Romeo Dobbs was the guy that kind of looked good at the beginning of the year, and then as the year went on, he kind of dealt with injury and kind of faded out a little bit. So as Watson developed, Dobbs kind of faded out. But the two of them do give them a solid foundation moving forward because both Lazard and Cobb are free agents at the end of this season. The running back room is the strength of this team. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, a great one-two punch. Aaron Jones is a true do-it-all back. Got a lot of tread on the tires, but he really is the kind of guy that you can rely on to come in and do whatever you need him to do. AJ Dillon, uh, kind of more designed as kind of that power back role, but really brings a lot to the table as a receiver as well. He is also kind of developing into that true kind of do it all back. It really is one of the best 1-2 punches in the league at the running back position. On the defensive side of the ball, they really addressed the defense heavy early in last year's draft with both Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker out of Georgia. Um, both guys were able to kind of step in, play significant snaps as rookies, and uh, really give them some great playing, great uh, through the course of the year. The rest of the linebacker core, Devondre Campbell, Preston Smith. Devondre Campbell is one of the best middle linebackers in the league over the last couple of years. Uh, is a real good guy to have there in the middle of your defense. Rashawn Gary is getting better and better each year as a pass rusher. If he can continue to take the next step, he's going to be a real superstar and a real threat off of the edge. He's a guy that I don't think anybody's looking forward to going up against. Kenny Clark is the anchor in the center of that defense. Um, truly is one of the best nose tackles around. He's quick, he's strong, he's great at the point of attack. He offers quite a bit of pass rush ability as well from the position. Really is just a great nose tackle to have in the middle of that 3-4 defense. On the back end of the defense, the safety position, Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos uh, gave you a good combo back there. Darnell Savage is still uh, kind of getting better. He's still young, but is getting better every year. Adrian Amos has been around for quite a while at this point, and is the veteran that is always in the right position. Doesn't really get beat that much. Um, Not the player he once was, but he hasn't really lost a step either. But um, a good solid group back there. At the cornerback position, Jair Alexander is one of the best corners in the league when he is healthy. He is a true shutdown corner, um, and it's. I think you can honestly expect him to maintain this level of play, and potentially even add a little bit to his bag of tricks because he's still a young guy. He's still only going to be in his fifth year in the league. Um, so he's a guy that truly can do it all. Um, it's kind of a set it and forget it corner. The rest of their corner room is also uh, pretty good in support of that. Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes both offer good size and good speed to the position. And guys that make a lot of plays for you when you need them. So, all in all, this was a roster that was built to compete. Before the year before, this is a team that was in the NFC Championship game, and I think they had every expectation of going back. But unfortunately, just the year never really materialized for them that way. They really underperformed. Aaron Rodgers didn't look like the Aaron Rodgers we've known. He looked like he regressed a little bit, but given his age, I think some of that's to be expected. Um, all in all, it's a roster that is in a good spot um, to be competitive, but they do have some work that they need to do. So let's take a look at what this roster looks like now as the offseason has worn on and free agency has the first couple of waves of free agency have come and gone. Um, so the biggest piece of news is that, of course, Aaron Rodgers has essentially requested a trade to the New York Jets. Now, for the purposes of this, that hasn't happened yet, but I do have him on the bench because the Green Bay Packers are moving forward with the expectation that Jordan Love will be the starter for them next year. Jordan Love is a guy came out of Utah State a few years ago. He's going to be going into his fourth year. They do have the fifth year option, but he's a guy that really kind of needed to get a chance to show them if he can be the guy. Um, you don't want to waste the entirety of the rookie contract, so I can understand why Green Bay was ready to move on from Aaron Rodgers, given some of the drama that's been surrounding him the past couple of years. But at the same time, he is one of the best quarterbacks, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for a long time. So I understand the uh, the dilemma that they're in. They don't want to just give him away, but at the same time, they are ready to move on. So at some point, this deal will happen, but I'm not sure what the eventual compensation will be. But Jordan Love is a guy that um, I'm not sure what to expect. We just haven't seen enough of him. Some of the things that I have seen of him, I'm not sold on him as being a franchise guy. But I could be wrong. The Packers have done really well at identifying quarterbacks for a long time, so maybe he is the guy. The wide receiver room this year is led by Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs as the top two targets. Bo Melton is there as well as Samori Torre was another rookie they took a little bit later. So a very young receiver core. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, if they're willing to let Jordan Love grow with the receiving core. The strength of this team on offense will once again lie in the running game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Uh, as I mentioned before, it is one of the strongest 1-2 punches in the league. Uh, the offensive line is again led by Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins, who, when healthy, give you one of the strongest left sides of the line in the NFL. So it's an area where you could look to potentially get better. Right tackle is kind of your biggest question. The rest of the guys are solid. So it is an area that they could address early in the draft with the depth of the offensive line position. But I'm not sure that that's the way they're going to go. Tight end is we lost Robert Tunyon, so it's being led by Josiah DeGuara, um, who showed some flashes last year of kind of developing into a guy they could rely on. I don't know if I am a full believer, but he showed some flashes. So he'd be worth a late round flyer in your fantasy leagues. The defensive line, we're going to be expecting Wyatt to step into a starting role this year. We're going to be expecting more out of Quay Walker, expecting to see some maturity from him, so we don't have some of the frustration penalties, that mental toughness penalties that he got called for, uh, more than I think they would have expected last year. But the rest of their linebacker core is still intact. The rest of the D line is still intact. The cornerback room is intact. We did lose Adrian Amos, so safety is another position that they could look to address. Darnell Savage is still adequate there. So all in all, this is a roster that has taken a step back, especially once Aaron Rodgers is no longer there. It's going to be a roster that looks significantly weaker on paper than it did last year, um, but it still can be competitive in the NFC North. The NFC North is, for all intents and purposes, it could be wide open. The Lions showed signs of moving in the right direction. They could be very good. The Minnesota Vikings have also taken some hits in free agency and with age. Um, so they're taking a step back. The Bears are moving in the right direction, but we'll still need to see some further development from them before anybody can call them competitive. So the NFC North is kind of wide open, and the Packers kind of have to be looking at it and saying, well, why not us? So it's a roster that I like, but I don't love it. Um, they do have some holes that they need to address, but luckily they have some draft capital to do that. And if the trade for Rodgers happens before the draft, which I think the Packers would want to get done, so that they have that additional draft capital to plug those holes a little bit more. Get I, that's what I would expect, is that as the draft gets closer, the Aaron Rodgers trade happens, so that both the Jets and the Packers know what they're really working with in the draft. Um, so at the middle of the first round, I think the biggest point of emphasis for me would be looking at that right tackle spot for the Packers. Um, a guy like Broderick Jones or Darnell Wright um, would be your top two targets. Broderick Jones might be off the board by then, but maybe not. If he's there, he's the guy I'm going with. Darnell Wright is another uh, intriguing name as well, out of Tennessee. And Anton Harrison, the more I've looked at the Oklahoma tape, the more I've started to like some of the things that I've seen there. Dewan Jones is a guy that the more I watched of him, um, the less I thought of him as a first round talent, and the more I thought of him as a day two guy. Cody Mosh gives a lot of positional flexibility. I think he's going to be um, kind of a swing tackle. You could play him at guard as well. So there's a lot of guys at the right tackle position that could be in play for them um, at that spot in the first round. For safeties, as we're looking at strong safeties, none of these guys really give you that the positional value in the first round. But if they're there in the second and third round, if they get uh, my prediction is that the Jets end up trading their 2 second round picks for Aaron Rodgers. So the Packers will end up having 3 second round picks. This is definitely a position that you could attack with those second round picks. A guy like Sidney Brown out of Illinois or Antonio Johnson, if he's still on the board there, could really help this secondary quite a bit. Um, you outside of that, um, we're looking at a lot of the same positions that we've looked at before. Uh, 3, 4 D ends, um, a guy that can come in later, maybe a Gervin Dexter to come in behind Kenny Clark, give you some rotational ability there. In the second, third round would be a name that you might look at. Um, Linebackers, I think, are set. You can never have too many quality corners. I don't think it's a position you'll look at in the first round. Again, I think the value for them is really at tackle. I have a hard time not not drafting a tackle for them when I'm looking at it. But in the second round, you've got guys like Keely Ringo, Emmanuel Forbes, are all going to be there. DJ Turner is another interesting name out of Michigan. So you do have a lot of guys there. But let's take a look real quick at just a couple of the right tackles that we haven't looked at yet. So um, slide in here. Broderick Jones is the prize of the right tackle class. He is a plug and play right tackle. He's ready made, ready to go. Um, Set it and forget it. Right tackle for at least his first contract. You're not going to have to worry about it. He played for Georgia, national championship caliber, played in the SEC. So he went against top competition week in and week out. So he's a guy that's battle tested and knows what he's doing. Same can be said for Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright out of Tennessee is a guy that, uh, as I've been looking at Hendon Hooker and the two receivers a little bit more, he's a guy that I've really started to like quite a bit as well. Um, Again, not quite as polished as Broderick Jones, but he's a guy that you're going to be ready. You're going to be ready to go with from day one. Um, no real weaknesses in his game. Anton Harrison is the name that might need a little more polish than the other two guys, um, but coming out of Oklahoma, uh, level of competition isn't quite the same as the SEC that he saw. Um, but when you look at him, he is kind of the old school right tackle. He really looks and plays like a mauler. Um, Better run blocker than pass blocker, but um, adequate at both. He's just kind of he's going to be a good tackle. Will need a little bit more time to really kind of grow into his full potential, but he's a guy that I do like. Dewan Jones, uh, I think definitely a day two guy. He's an absolute mammoth. This is your prototypical throwback right tackle. 6'8", 370, run block specialist, but he holds up well in pass blocking as well. He doesn't get beat a ton, but he doesn't always win as dominantly as he should. So there's some questions that you might have there about why wasn't he winning. So he's a name that I think slides a little bit and definitely into day two. Same with Cody Mosh out of North Dakota State. Does bring you a lot of positional versatility. Like I said, I think you could play him up and down the offensive line, and he would give you a lot of versatility there for injury, things like that. You could move him around and he'd be completely adequate in a lot of different spots. So first round, I definitely think tackle is the way to go for them. I think that it solves their biggest problem, especially when you're going to be playing a young quarterback that hasn't doesn't have the experience that Aaron Rodgers has. But it is a roster that I expect to compete and be competitive week in and week out. I'm not sure how they end up, but it is a roster that has a lot of talent, so they can be very competitive. But for now, that's going to do it for me and our taking our look at the Green Bay Packers. As always, I appreciate feedback. If you have comments on who you think we should do next, somebody that I missed, an option that you think they should consider in the draft, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will talk to you next time. Thanks.